The Swedish Volunteer Flotilla in Finland, also known as F19, was a Swedish volunteer air unit that played a significant role during the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union. At the beginning of the war, the Finnish Air Force was in a bad situation with insufficient equipment, so Sweden decided to support Finland by donating 8 fighter aircraft on 8 of December 1939. These included 3 Jaktvalkar J-6 fighter aircraft, 3 Fokker CVE-S-6 reconnaissance aircraft, and 2 Bristol Bulldog J-7s. On 14th of December of the same year, planning for a voluntary flying unit was started by the Swedish Air Staff. The unit would consist of a fighter division and a bomber division, and would be located in northern Finland. Major Hugo Beckhammer was appointed flotilla commander, and the organization began on 19th of December. About 240 volunteers were quickly recruited and sent by train from Haparanda to Kemi in northern Finland to prepare the base in Veitsiluoto, south of Kemi. The Swedish government placed additional fighter aircraft at the unit's disposal on 30 December 1939. These included 5 B-4 Hawker Hart bombers and 12 J-8 Gloucester Gladiator fighters. On the 7th of January 1940, the F-19's main airbase at Veitsiluoto was ready for use, and on 10th of January the aircraft arrived from Sweden. The unit consisted of a flotilla staff, fighter division, light bomb group, transport group, and a station company with a total of 250 men and 2 lots. In addition, 5 forward war bases were established for the air, mainly on ice-covered lakes, which allowed for more flexible operations. All Swedish aircraft were equipped with communication radios for efficient coordination. This effort by the Swedish Volunteer Aviation Association and other Swedish volunteers who participated in the Swedish Volunteer Corps contributed significantly to strengthening Finland's defense during the Winter War. The Swedish Air Flotilla planes that operated in Finland belonged to the Swedish Air Force, but when they flew in Finland, they used Finnish designations. All Swedish designations on the aircraft had been removed, and instead they had Finnish blue swastikas painted on a white background. It is important to note that this swastika had nothing to do with Nazism. The Finnish Air Force had used this symbol since 1918, and it originally represented happiness or the sun in Indian culture. On the side rudder of the aircraft, large letters were placed for individual marking. The fighters had yellow lettering, while the bombers had black lettering to clearly distinguish them and allow for easy identification. This use of Finnish designations and symbols on the aircraft of the Swedish Air Force in Finland underlines the close cooperation and support between the two countries during the Winter War, and emphasizes that the swastika in this context had a completely different cultural and historical meaning than that later associated with Nazism. Fighter pilot Ian Iacobi became the first pilot in the Swedish Air Flotilla F-19 to shoot down a Russian fighter plane. On January 12, 1940, he shot down a Polikarpov I-15 in a dogfight. Another significant event occurred on 21 February 1940, when F-19 fighter pilots Arne Frykholm and Karl Olof Steninger shot down a Russian heavy bomber, an Ilyushin DB-3. This bomber had previously participated in a group of Russian aircraft that had bombed Pajala in Sweden on the same day. The downing of this Ilyushin DB-3 was further proof of the F-19's effectiveness in defending against Russian attacks during that time. The picture shows the downed Russian Ilyushin DB-3 bomber, which has now been recovered and loaded onto a truck. This clearly shows the success of Swedish fighter pilots in defending Finland during the Second World War. F-19's air bases in Finland. The main base was on the Gulf of Bothnia, south of Kemi, at Veitsiluoto, next to a sulfite factory there. The takeoff and landing strips were on the frozen sea ice in the bay. The area was surrounded by several protective islands. The sea ice with its firm, even snow cover formed an excellent airfield. The planes were also equipped with skis instead of wheels. The flotilla's efforts. The Swedish Air Flotilla's efforts were certainly limited by their availability of aircraft and should not be exaggerated. But the F-19's efforts made the Russians more cautious, and in some situations the air flotilla had a decisive importance for the development of the war. After the 10th of January 1940, the Russians no longer had air supremacy on the northern front in Finland. When the armistice entered on the 13th of March 1940, The F-19 had operated for 62 days, of which 60 were flying days, and on average 8 planes were operational every day, 67%. The result for the F-19 was 12 destroyed Russian aircraft, of which 8 in air combat and 4 on the ground, and 6 own aircraft losses, as well as 3 Swedish pilots killed. However, only 2 of these aircraft were lost in aerial combat. In total, the F-19 repelled about 30 enemy bombing raids.